All right, so I'm going to walk through this entire flow map on how to really hire an A player director of lifecycle. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a lot of documents I'm sharing. I'm sharing like my job posting template. I'm going to walk through a test task. I'm going to give a couple SOPs and a form. You can download this entire chart in the description. And if you go into this, when you download and you get the resource, you can click on the links and you can see, you can get access to, like, if you want to look at how we do the job application, you can click on that link and see exactly what it is. So if you want to dive deeper into this, be sure to check out the link in the description to get access to this entire flow map. But let me start at the very beginning here. And first off, I want to start off, and I want you to think about what stage your brand is at. Okay. And in my experience, there's really only four stages. I mean, obviously you can niche down into different, like, oh, I'm a fast growing apparel store, or I'm a, in supplements, or there's other sub niches. But I think, like, when you think about from like a revenue perspective, normally you're like an entrepreneurial brand, which is you're under $1 million in annual revenue. You're an SMB, or a small to medium sized business, which is about probably 10 million is kind of the cap. So you're under $10 million in run rate. And then once you get over that $10 million mark, you're kind of in the mid market, maybe even $30 million. You're in the lower end, and then really scaling all the way up to like $500 million a year. You're kind of in that mid market. And then obviously once you get into like over $500 million in annual revenue, you're kind of in the enterprise. And the reason I talk about this is because I think it depends, like how you go about this kind of depends on what stage you're at. In my experience, most entrepreneurial brands and most smaller SMBs really don't need to hire a director of lifecycle. It's not really till you get into the upper band of SMB, like you're doing 7, 8, maybe $9 million in annual run rate, or certainly when you're into the mid market and you're doing 20, 50, $100 million in annual run rate, and you have like a big omni-channel presence. You're not just a Shopify Plus store, or like you have an Amazon business. You're in retail stores. And it's truly like an omni-channel business. I think that's when this role becomes a lot more critical. At least that's been my experience with working with different brands. Okay. Now, with that said, one thing I want to talk about, because I think there's some confusion sometimes, especially in the lower end of the mid market, even the SMBs. I think sometimes these, at least some of the brands I've worked with that have struggled to make this hire, they think a lifecycle director is like a one-person department. They think that they can just hire this one person and they're going to be able to manage everything that's lifecycle or CRM. So that includes the newsletter, that includes the flow, any flow optimizations you want to do, any pop-up optimization, any direct mail, loyalty programs, SMS, like all the different touch points in your CRM. And some of the smaller stores I've worked with think that they can just make this one hire and they're going to manage it all. And in my experience, it doesn't work like that. Like you got to realize these director of lifecycle, and I'm going to get into it in a second here and show you in the job description. These are more like high level strategist type roles. Okay. They're really good at data. They're very tactical. They're good at like understanding reports and segments. And they're not somebody that has like design skills. Okay. I mean, don't get me wrong. In a pinch, they could come in and write some copy, fix some development issues in a flow, or maybe design something really quick. But at a really scaled up brand, typically the director of lifecycle is either overseeing an agency that's like sort of helping manage some of the campaigns and the flows and stuff like that, or they're overseeing like an in-house team. And when I say an in-house team, I mean like the director of lifecycle has access to some sort of creative team where it's like there's a designer, a developer, a copywriter, and they're kind of the strategist and manager that's sort of leading the team. Okay, so at scale, that's what I've seen. Okay, so you need to realize that, like, if you don't have these either one of these things in place, sometimes it's both, then it's hard to hire a director of lifecycle. They're not going to just be able to come in and overhaul everything on their own. They need like a tactical team. Okay, so I just want to start with that. Okay, very important. All right, now let's move in, because I think this is where some other people get stuck. I've seen. Okay, so first off, like, we need to define like what is an A player. Okay, I hear this people all the time, like, I want an A player this, I want an A player that, and then I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I would love for you to get an A player. What is an A player for your brand or for your company? Okay, and then it's like, oh, they just do a great job, you know. And in my experience, that's not a good enough answer. Like, you need to get very clear on what is an A player. And I got some experience in this because I've helped people make this hire. I've hired tons of people in my agency, and it's very clear what makes an A player. Okay. And in my experience, there's 4 key things that make an A player. All right. The first thing is they need to have what we call it grit, but they just need to like be able to work hard. They need to be somebody that, like, you can, like, at the end of the day, when there's no systems, they don't have all the information, they don't have all the data, they're the type of person that could just figure out how to do it on their own. I like to sort of give a metaphor. It's like, okay, like, a couple metaphors I give, like, I always like to give an American football metaphor where it's like, if they're like a cornerback, I can leave them alone. You know, they can guard the wide receiver. I don't need to bring safety help underneath. Or I like to give the island metaphor. It's like, if they're stuck on an island, like, they're going to figure out how to survive. They might not have all the tools. They might struggle, but they have so much grit and determination that they're going to figure it out. And that is the number one thing, in my opinion, in making sure you hire an A player for any role in any company, is, do they have grit? Do they have hustle? At the end of the day, when they just don't have anything, can they figure it out on their own? The next thing is, like, are they aligned with your values? Now, some of you might be running an e-commerce brand and you're like, well, we don't have values, or we haven't built that out yet. But I think that's really, really important. And then it comes into the two things that I think most people focus on. Is like, do they have the skills and do they get the results? Okay. And the problem is, like, most brands I see, like, they only focus on, do they have the skills? Do they get the results? Or did they work at this company or this agency? And therefore, okay, they'll be perfect fit for my agency or my business because they have these skills and they've gotten these results. And the reality is that, like, I've seen some directors of lifecycle where they had the best skills. They were like some of the most, like, tactically sound director of life cycles for a brand, but they were a terrible fit because they weren't aligned with the values. They were also kind of arrogant and cocky, and they didn't want to work hard. Okay. So, and here's the crazy thing about A players. Like, if you really hire based on values and grit, okay, like, those people, remember how I said, like, grit is the most important thing because you can leave them alone on an island and they're just going to figure it out. That's where it comes to the results and skills. If you hire an A player that has a lot of grit, they're going to be able to figure out how to get the skills and how to get the results anyway. Okay. Now, you need to screen a little bit. You obviously want them to be like, have a fair amount of experience in life cycle and have some skills coming in. I'm not saying hire people that don't even know what a CRM is. I'm just saying, like, if you have like a couple different candidates where you're thinking about, okay, they all have like decent experience in life cycle, but there's this one candidate that is off the chart aligned with our values and off the chart aligned, and like has really good grit. Like, I tend to prioritize those candidates over people that just have the better looking resume. So just my experience, okay? Because they tend to be much better culture fits and stay longer at your company. Another thing with A players is I like to tell people like we need to hire a little bit over market. Okay, so let's just say the director of lifecycle, you're trying to hire them is, I don't know, let's just say it's $100,000 a year. Okay, maybe it's a little more if you're up in the upper band of mid market or into the enterprise. Maybe it's less if you're an SMB, but let's just, for the purpose of this video, let's just say $100,000, okay, a year. Um, I would prefer to pay them like 110, 125 because they're an A player. We want them to stay, okay. And sometimes like I know some of you, when I get into this video later, like you might have to recruit, poach these people. Um, you might have to just pay them that amount to get them to come over to your brand. Okay. And then the last thing is I want to tell you guys to move fast. Like recruiting, especially when you start posting jobs, like sometimes you're getting hundreds of candidates applying a day. And I've noticed some brands are like, we need to hire a director of lifecycle. And then like maybe it's the founder or like the VP of marketing or something, and then they don't realize like how much goes in to like actually recruiting for this role. And it can get into, I mean, it can get, for a lot of these jobs, it can get into almost like a part-time job, just sorting through all these candidates. And so you really need to have some systems in place and be able to move fast, or just like free up your time for the next 2 or 3 weeks to be able to spend, 5, maybe 10 hours a week, especially if this is a really big problem in your business right now, to really make sure you make the right hire. Okay. And I'm going to talk through why, especially if you don't have like a VA or a recruiting team or an HR team who can help you handle this. You really need to free up your time a little bit to really like go through the process of interviewing and screening people and then making the hire. And it just takes time. All right. So with that said, I think the first thing you need to do is you need to nail down your job description. Now, I've linked to a job description here, all right, that you can check out, and I'll go through it. And you can totally, again, like if you download this, you can totally copy it for your own brand. But what I like to do is I like to put like a little bit blurb about the brand, a little bit about the role. If you really want what an A player is, you really need to define what an A player is to the team, to the candidates, and be aligned with that internally. Okay. Then what are the key responsibilities? And here's some that you can copy. And then I like to define like the key KPIs for this role. Okay. And as a bonus, I'm going to give away like a scorecard you can use, but for this role. But you don't need to use all of these KPIs. Like 3 to 5 is the most. And where I see a lot of the KPIs for this role is more around like the own channel revenue, especially if you're a brand that sells like supplements or some sort of recurring product, subscription product. Maybe it's in beauty or something like that. I've seen like retention become more of a focus too. Maybe it's like LTV from channel, purchase frequency, something like that. Pick 3 to 5, whatever are most important for your store or your brand. Okay. And then I like to have must-haves and nice-haves. Okay. And you could edit it based off your tech stack or your business. But I think must-have is you want people that have experience owning the lifecycle channel. They have deep experience with various CRMs. They have very strong analytical skills and know how to like really read data and come up with strategies based off the data, not just like their feelings or their ideas. They're ideating life cycle strategy based off what the data is telling them. That's really, really important. I really look for that whenever I'm hiring this role. And then I like to do this too. It depends on the job application. And I highlighted this, okay, because some of you might delete this. Some of you be like, no, we're not going to do that. But I like to put in what's called an Easter egg. Okay. So an Easter egg is like basically, because I'm going to get into it in a second, like you're going to get so many candidates and really you're looking to disqualify like 95% of these candidates. Okay. And an Easter egg does that right away, because the reality is this role, like Director of Lifecycle, requires attention to detail. Okay. And you want to make sure, like, already at the jump, you're interviewing candidates that have basic attention to detail. Okay. And as a direct, when you say something like this, hey, send us your cover letter and write lifecycle A player at the top of the cover letter. Um, it automatically just gives you a way to disqualify people that um, don't have attention to detail. So I like to do that. Sometimes we don't do this, sometimes we do, but this Easter egg really helps like screen out candidates. Okay, so that's a little bit about the job description. Let's go back into how do I present this again? Okay. All right. So once you nail the job description, here's where I've found like the best places to hire director of lifecycle. Okay. There's LinkedIn, like LinkedIn. Um, you can post on LinkedIn. Indeed is really good too. Especially, I know the brands that are probably watching this, you guys are working remotely. So I've had good experience with job boards like We Work Remotely. You might get some more underqualified candidates there, but I've seen some, like, occasionally you'll get some good ones. Um, there's always the recruiter poaching. I've seen this going on where you just hire a recruiter and um, they go out and try to find a director of life cycle at another brand, maybe in another category or a category that's adjacent to yours or within your current category. I've seen that. Again, like, it doesn't always, it works sometimes. I mean, it's a good move, but I just, coming back to like what is an A player, just because someone, let's say you're a $50 million a year supplement brand, okay, and you're like, okay, we need to go hire a director of life cycle. This candidate had life cycle experience at Athletic Greens or AG1. Okay, just because they have experience at AG1 doesn't always mean they're the best candidate for your brand. Okay, just because they've worked at um, a a competitor or another brand that is like further ahead in their journey, doesn't mean it's always the best fit for your brand. Okay. It's a good assumption. Okay. I'm not saying it's a bad assumption. It's a good assumption. It's depth, like those candidates, you definitely go to the top of the list, but you really need to make sure they're a values fit and they have that grit and work ethic. Okay. Because sometimes, also in my experience at these bigger brands, it's like they really weren't the people that like were driving the growth. They were just sort of on a team that did it. Okay. Especially if you're a smaller challenger brand where this is your first time hiring this role and you really need to hire that A player to get it right. Like, you want to make sure that like these people actually can do the same thing at your brand, okay, and that can transfer over, and that's not always the case, okay. Upwork, I've had okay results with, definitely like lower level jobs like designers, developers, stuff like that. But put it up there, you might get some really good people applying, especially if they have experience. Like, if because another place that you could think about hiring from is agencies, because a lot of people that were like account managers at agencies and stuff like that, they've seen a lot of different things work and they have a lot of experiences. And like a lot of times you'll find good candidates, like agency candidates on Upwork, freelancer candidates, stuff like that. Okay, so run them, once you get them launch the job, okay, you want to try to send them to a form. Okay, now it might differ based off the job application or the job platform. Like, sometimes you can send them these forms, sometimes you can't. Sometimes the form has to be on the platform. So, I'm just going to link to the form that we use, uh, and what I like to do is I like to keep it simple. You don't want to like, you don't want to make it so complex that like it's going to take a long time for them to apply and they're like, okay, I'm just not even going to do this. But you want to make it they're a little bit challenging so that like you're not just getting a bunch of people applying and then you're having to sort through these. Okay. So what I like is obviously name, last name, email, LinkedIn URL, link to resume and cover, um, film a 2 to 3 minute video, and then anything else. And let me tell you a couple things here. So some people put the file upload. I like to put link to resume and cover letter because it means that they have to like upload their resume and cover letter into some sort of file sharing system. Maybe it's Google Drive or Dropbox or something. They have to make that link public and then they have to send it over to you. Okay. And so we see a lot of people that are just like, hey, I'll do this on our first interview, or they put stuff like not available, or they'll give you a link, but it's not a public link. And so these are like little tells that they don't have like really good attention to detail. And they're not really good at following directions. And normally, like, this is a place where you can kind of disqualify people. Okay. Another thing too is I like this video, film a 2 to 3 minute video walking us through a challenging lifecycle marketing problem you solved, how you approached it, and what the outcome was. Okay. So this is good too because again, it shows, okay, do you have like the capabilities to film a video? All right. In today's 2026, I'm filming this. Like, you need to have those skills. Okay. And it gives a little insight in what they think a challenging problem is, how they approached it, and like what the outcome was. So they have to show some like critical skills around life cycle. Okay. And, like you'll learn a lot here. And then another thing too is like some people will say, hey, we can talk about this on the first interview, or they'll send over like, it's in my resume or something like that. And again, like, they immediately disqualified if they don't send a Loom video, because you can see, okay, they're not good at following directions. If they can't follow directions in the job application process, how are they going to like follow directions when you hire them and they're in your company? Okay. And I know sometimes these roles, it's not all about following directions. Like, you need them to critically think and think on their own. But the reality is, like, it's a little bit of both. You definitely need, especially if you're a more scaled up brand where you have clear brand guidelines and stuff like that, you need somebody that like is going to have like some decent attention to detail and follow some sort of rules. Okay. But also be able to critically think on top of those rules. And this question like really, really screens for that. Okay. So that's what I like to do. Send them to a job application like this. Okay. And then once you get through to the job application, um, again, you're going to disqualify 95% of these candidates, okay? Based off what I said before, like, either you did that Easter egg thing I talked about in the job description, they didn't do that. Either they just didn't really fill out the job application the right way. And then if they did fill out the job application that way, you're probably going to get like a handful. Let's say you're probably going to get 10, maybe 15% of these candidates that actually did it the right way and then filmed a Loom video. And then you're going to be able to find in those Loom videos, or whatever tool they use to film the video, you're going to be able to find, like, I would say 5 to 10 candidates that actually really know what they're talking about when it comes to like life cycle, getting outcomes, and can actually explain what they did in a manner that like makes sense and could actually be impactful for your brand. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking to get that Loom video. You're looking to see those 5, 10, maybe 15, 20 candidates that really, really knew what they were talking about in their Loom video. They followed the directions, and they also followed the directions in the job application process. Okay. So once you have those 10, 15, 20 applicants, whatever they may be, the first thing you're going to want to do is schedule a call. Okay. So now this is where I tell you, like, if you don't have a recruiter, or you don't have an HR team handling this, and it's just you're just like the VP of marketing, or maybe you're the co-founder of this e-commerce brand, okay, or the founder of it, or you're the CEO. Like, it's going to have to be you doing this, okay? And this is where it takes up time, okay? Because you have to go and you have to do like interview one, the first interview, and like you have to reach out to them. You have to get the call scheduled. Then you have to get on the call and talk to them. And this is where it can take like hours of your week. Sometimes you're doing this multiple weeks. Okay. The good news is I have an SOP for you on how to do this. Okay. So you can just click on this link, and really all you're looking to do is just like screen them for 30 to 45 minutes. And really by the end of the interview, you want to know, okay, like what is their experience with SMS, CRM, lifecycle marketing? And you can turn these into questions like, what are the type of brands they've worked with? You want to, are they able to think strategically beyond basic campaign metrics? What is their QA and attention to detail process? What is their ability to stay organized and manage multiple campaigns? Like when they have, you might have different product launches, different campaigns going on. Yeah, you might send a campaign this week, but you got to line up, 3 or 4 campaigns next week. Like, how do they go about that process? And like, what type of outcomes do they own? Not just like completing the task. Okay. So I'll put some questions below and then some interview questions below that you can ask, but that's what you're looking to do. Pro tip, I always like to record these meetings and run them through the AI, and just, so that I get a second opinion um, how successful the call went, which candidate stands out. So that's what I like to do. All right. After that, okay, so you're going to do that call, and there's probably going to be some people you disqualify. You're like, ooh, that wasn't, they're just not aligned, or the vibe wasn't right, or because they just lied in their application. When I actually got them on a call, like I could tell it was just, they're just doing AI stuff in the application. But when I actually got them on the call, I asked them real questions. Like they didn't really have good answers. Okay. So that's where you're screening for that. You're screening for the people that kind of just, because anybody can make a good application, a resume look good, but you kind of want to interview them, put them on the spot a little bit, and see how they answer. Okay. All right. So once they do that, okay, and you find, like, let's say you have 20 candidates that you're like, okay, these we want to do a call with. Okay. Of those 20 candidates, all right, let's make it a little bit shorter. There's 10 candidates we do a call with. Okay. Of those 10 candidates, 5 really stood out. Okay. I recommend doing a paid test task. Okay. So for these 5 candidates that stood out. All right. And I have a link to to this test task that you can copy mine. It doesn't need to be this advanced, but this is what we like to do when we hire account managers, which is similar to the director of lifecycle. And I've also helped some of my clients build a test task before and be like, hey, just use this if you're looking to hire a director of lifecycle. And this is basically what it is. It should take 3 to 5 hours. You want to pay them beforehand because remember, they don't truly trust you. Maybe if you're like a really well-known brand, they might, but like I like to pay people ahead of time, figure out what their hourly rate is, and you can just, send them money via PayPal or however you can deploy money. I know if you're working at a larger enterprise company, this might be harder to do. But for most fast scaling mid-markets, SMBs, like there's a way for you to like quickly send people some money to ahead of time to do this. Okay. And so that way they trust you and you're going to get their best work. Okay. And sometimes I even like we even have like a playground account or like a mock account or a staging environment maybe. So you could do that. That's one thing. You could do both of these parts, or you could just choose one of them as your test task. But I like to see if they can build out a flow and have like really good attention to detail. And then I like for them to send a link like a Loom video or an explanation of like what's going on in that flow so they can walk through it. Okay. Another thing that I think works well too, especially for larger brands, another test task is for them to prepare a mock performance report, like an update, like of what the performance department, the lifecycle department is looking like this month, and be able to like go through wins, issues, opportunities, show the report, and be able to communicate that to different stakeholders on the marketing team. Because especially for larger, if you're like working at an enterprise brand or a larger mid-market brand and you're looking to hire this role, there's just more people involved in the business. And part of the role is not only just like being a director of lifecycle and, being tactically sound and getting results in the lifecycle program, but also part of the job is being able to communicate across different stakeholders, whether that's different departments, different agencies even, and communicate what's working, what's not working, what are the wins, what are the challenges, what are we doing next, and so like I found this is a really good test task too. So feel free to copy this, but the reason this test task is so good because you're going to be able to see like actually how they work, okay, and before you actually have to hire them, okay? Because some people, they just like hire them and then they realize a month in, like, this is true for all roles, not just director of lifecycle. Wow, this person isn't really that good. They just sort of lied on their application. They're really good at the interview process, but they're not really good. Like once we got them into the org chart and actually they're delivering work on a daily basis. Okay, so this is a way for you to screen to see how they truly work, and there's just no way to really fake this. Okay, so you're going to see some really good people that stand out, and then you're going to see some people that don't, and then you're basically going to be able to whittle this down to probably like three candidates. Okay, in my opinion, that the paid test task people really tend to stand out here. And that's how you can really see the A players. Okay, so now you've really got like, by this point, you've got like a couple candidates that are okay, like they're really really good, and you just need to go through the final stages to get the deal done, so or to get the hire done. And so what I like to do next is like a peer review. So this would be like if they've passed the test task. So sometimes, let's say you get 5 people in the test task, 3 of them are good, 2 of them they're not so good. Okay, then I like to go to like a peer review, where they're normally talking with somebody like in an adjacent seat in your company. So let's say it's like or they could be talking with their future manager if the future manager is not involved in the hiring process, but basically some way for them to get not only introduced for their sake, introduced to somebody else in the company, but also for your sake to just get a fresh set of eyes on the culture, see if they'd be a good fit, to see like just get a second opinion on things. Now I've seen some brands do it where it's almost like a committee review where it would be like a couple different people are doing it. So you could do that, or it could just be one person, but you just want to have like multiple interviews here. Some brands have like 3, 4, 5 different peer reviews. It just depends. I think just at least having one is a great start. Okay. But you only want to do this after they've been thoroughly screened on a first call. In my opinion, we like to do the test task before. Some people do it where they do the peer review, then they do the paid test task. I like to do it this way. So it's like, we're not wasting the team's time. It's like, this person coming in has passed the test cast. They are really, really competent. And it's like, we need you to help decide if they're really, truly going to be an A player here. So that's what I like, but I've seen it flip flop before. It just depends on what's a good fit for your brand. Okay. Once you do the peer review, in my opinion, you need to do reference checks. Okay. And most people, they're just like, hey, like send us your references, and they never check the actual references. Like you need to check the references, okay? Um, and one of the biggest problems with reference checks is just getting adoption from the people that they reference. Or sometimes they'll like reference like their friends or something like that, you know? So you want to make sure like they have quality references. It's either like their former boss, that would be ideal, or just somebody they worked with adjacently in the department. Um, and there's two ways, in my opinion, to get like adoption. Because again, like sometimes these people, like you'll try to call or you'll email their reference, and they'll just ghost you because they're busy and they don't have time and they don't really see the benefit in this. So two ways I like to do it. One is have them introduce you, be like, okay, like um, we have to do reference checks. It's just standard operating procedure here at our brand. If you have two or three references, could you please introduce them to me via email? Okay. So that's one way to do it. Have the candidate do it. And again, this just, do they follow directions? Do they have attention to detail? Again, if they can't introduce you to references, it's normally like not a good fit. It's another way to disqualify them. And then another one I like to do, I got this originally from Andrew Wilkinson, the founder of Tiny. This is what he does. It's a little bit evil. Okay, warning, it's evil, but this script works. Okay, so if they give you the references, okay, you could email their reference and say, hey, this candidate, whatever their name is, mentioned you as a reference for a lifecycle position we have open. No need for a call or a lengthy email. Just a simple question: would you hire her or him again? I don't want to take up too much of your time. Just a simple yes or no answer is fine. Please note, and this is where it gets evil, okay? Please note, if I don't hear anything back, I'll assume you wouldn't recommend her or rehire her. And like, let me tell you, this script like really gets adoption, because if they really like the person, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, like she was great. I want them to get this job. And if they don't hear back from me, like she's probably not gonna get this job. And all I have to just say is yes or no. And so it normally gets like really good adoption. Okay. And then obviously if you don't hear anything back, now sometimes like they might be on vacation or they might be busy. And so sometimes you'll get like messages a couple days later. They don't stay on top of their email. But if you don't hear anything back, that's normally like a red flag. So I like to use this script. It just depends if you want to do something like this. I know some larger, more scaled of enterprise brands probably aren't going to do something like this. So I recommend just having them introduce you. But if you're sort of scrappy, if you're a smaller brand, more of a challenger brand, willing to take more risks, like this script works like gold. All right. And then basically you hire the candidate. Okay. And then they move on to training, onboarding and training. Okay. And so that's basically, in my opinion, how you make this hire. Yeah, I mean, so as a bonus, I'm going to give away a scorecard, like I recommend having scorecards for every role. So I'm going to give you a scorecard for a director of lifecycle. That's just basically a monthly check-in, like what their KPIs, what their responsibilities are, and how you can score them and make sure they're an A player every month. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this training. If you have any questions, you can just email me anytime, will@flowcandy.com. If you have any particular questions about this process, or I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, and I linked to my LinkedIn, and you can just click on that and you can DM me there. And like I said, if you're watching this on YouTube, in the description, you'll be able to download. You'll be able to get access to this file, and you'll be able to click on the links and get access to all of these SOPs, all of these job descriptions, the forms, the scripts that I've talked about in this video. You'll be able to access them. All right. Thanks again for watching, and I hope this helped, and I'll see you on next time.